The war room of the Confederacy was quiet, too quiet. Ambassadors stood before the massive holographic map that showed their territory. 30 years ago, it had glowed bright blue across half the galaxy. Now most of it was dark red, the color of the enemy, the color of the swarm. Was old by standards. She had seen her species rise to greatness. She had watched them build alliances with 11 other spacefaring races. Together, they had formed the Confederacy, a union of peace and progress. They had believed themselves safe. They had believed wrong. They came from the outer rim of the galaxy. They were not like other species. They did not want trade. They did not want treaties. They wanted only one thing: to consume. Their massive hive ships moved from system to system, stripping planets bare, turning entire civilizations into food for their ever-growing swarm. High Commander entered the war room. He was a species of tall with 4 arms and compound eyes. He moved with the weight of a leader who had lost too many battles. Another system fell today, said. His voice was tired. The system, 40 million gone. Closed her eyes. She had friends in, family. Now they were nothing but nutrients for the swarm. How long do we have? She asked. At this rate, 5 years, maybe less. They are learning our tactics. Our weapons do less damage each time. Our shields fail faster. Paused. We need help, Ambassador. Help from outside the Confederacy. Turn to face him. There is no one else. We have contacted every known species. They are too far. They refuse to fight. The Syndicate wants payment we cannot afford. There is one more, said slowly. The humans. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. Almost laughed. Almost. The humans, the primitives from the Sol system, they have no faster-than-light travel, no energy weapons, no shields. They still kill each other over lines drawn on maps. What could they possibly offer us? Walked to the holographic map and zoomed in on a small yellow star at the edge of explored space. Earth, a tiny blue planet orbiting an unremarkable sun. I know what the reports say, admitted, but I have studied them more closely. Yes, they are primitive. Yes, they are violent. But Ambassador, they are violent in ways I have never seen. They do not fight like us. They do not follow rules. They use tricks and traps. They poison water. They burn fields. They hide in shadows and strike without warning. That sounds like barbarism, said. It sounds like survival, replied. The humans have been fighting each other for their entire history. They have never known peace, and yet they still exist. Every war makes them stronger. Every defeat makes them more clever. He turned to face her. We have been fighting for 30 years and we are losing. The humans have been fighting themselves for 30,000 years and they are still here. Perhaps barbarism is what we need. Was silent for a long time. She thought about the 40 million dead in. She thought about the billions who would die if they did nothing. She thought about her pride and how worthless it would be when the swarm reached her. Send the message, she said finally. Ask them for support, medical aid, logistics, anything they can give. The message traveled across the stars at the speed of light, bouncing through relay stations until it reached the small blue planet called Earth. It was received by a satellite dish in South Korea, decoded by a military computer, and sent directly to the United Nations Space Defense Council. There, it landed on the desk of Admiral Park. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had spent 40 years in the military, rising through the ranks by being smarter and tougher than everyone around her. She had fought in 3 wars on Earth before humanity even knew aliens existed. Now she commanded all of Earth's space defense forces. She read the alien message 3 times, then she read it again. Aliens were asking for help, not demanding, not threatening, asking. They were desperate. They were losing a war against an enemy that wanted to eat them and they had nowhere else to turn. So they had turned to humanity, the species they considered primitive, the species they had ignored for 50 years. Admiral Park smiled. It was not a kind smile. She picked up her phone and called General, commander of the Experimental Warfare Division. He answered on the 2nd ring. General, she said, how quickly can you prepare Project Thunder? There was a pause. Project Thunder is not ready for deployment. We need at least 6 more months of testing. You have 3 months, Park said. The aliens have asked for our help. They want support, medical supplies, logistics. And what are we going to give them? Admiral Park looked out her window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, an alien civilization was dying. They had asked humanity for scraps. They had asked for bandages and boxes. They had no idea what they were really asking for. "We are going to give them a surprise," she said. "Prepare the fleet. Wake up the soldiers. Call back the scientists. Humanity is going to war." She hung up the phone and looked at the alien message one more time. "You wanted support," she whispered. "You have no idea what you have just started." 3 months later, the first human warship left Earth orbit. It was ugly. It was blocky. It carried no shields and no energy weapons, but in its belly it carried something the aliens had never seen before. It carried human creativity, human anger, human stubbornness. It carried war the way humans waged it. And the galaxy would never be the same. The warp gate opened like a wound in space. Blue light poured out, and from that light came the human fleet. Ambassador watched from the observation deck of the Confederacy's command station. Around her stood leaders from all 12 allied species. They had gathered to witness the arrival of humanity's promised support. They expected cargo ships filled with medicine. They expected transport vessels carrying food. They expected very little. What they saw confused them. The human ships were nothing like Confederacy vessels. Confederacy ships were elegant. They curved like sea creatures, their hulls smooth and their shields shimmering with protective energy. The human ships looked like they had been built in a factory by workers who had never heard of beauty. They were boxes, rectangles, sharp angles and flat surfaces, gray metal covered in strange markings. "Those are warships," said High Commander. His compound eyes studied the approaching fleet. "They sent warships." "Warships with no shields," observed Director of the species. She was a small creature with blue skin and large black eyes. "I detect no energy barriers, no plasma weapons. What are those tubes on the front of their vessels?" No one could answer. The humans had sent 47 ships. The largest was perhaps half the size of a standard Confederacy cruiser. They moved in tight formation, their movements precise and coordinated. A communication signal came through. A human face appeared on the main screen. It was a woman with black hair and serious eyes. She wore a gray uniform with many symbols on the chest. "This is Captain Lee of the UNSC Hammer," she said. "We come on behalf of the United Nations of Earth to answer your request for assistance, requesting permission to dock." Stepped forward. "Permission granted, Captain. We welcome you to the Confederacy. I am Ambassador. I will meet you personally." 1 hour later, stood in the docking bay as the human shuttle landed. The door opened, and Captain Lee stepped out, followed by a young man in a similar uniform. Was surprised by how small the humans were. Captain Lee was shorter than most and thinner too. Her companion, who introduced himself as Lieutenant, was only slightly taller. They did not look like warriors. They looked fragile. "Thank you for coming," said formally. "We appreciate any support you can provide. Our people are suffering, and we need all the help we can get." Captain Lee nodded. "We understand. We have brought everything you requested: medical supplies, food, engineering equipment." She paused. "We have also brought something you did not request." "And what is that?" "Solutions." The word hung in the air. Did not understand its meaning. She led the humans to the War Council chamber where the 12 species leaders waited. The humans walked calmly, their eyes moving constantly, studying everything they saw. Lieutenant carried a small bag over his shoulder. In the council chamber, High Commander stood at the head of the table. His 4 arms were crossed. His attitude was not welcoming. "Captain Lee," he said, "we thank you for traveling so far, but I must be direct. We asked for support because we hoped your species might have something useful to offer. Looking at your ships, I have concerns. Your vessels have no defensive shields. Your weapons appear to be kinetic projectiles. We abandoned such primitive technology centuries ago. How exactly do you plan to help us fight the?" Expected the humans to be offended. She expected anger or embarrassment. Instead, Captain Lee simply smiled. It was a small smile, but there was something in it that made uncomfortable. High Commander, Captain Lee said, I understand your doubts. Our technology is different from yours, simpler perhaps, but I would ask you a question. For 30 years you have fought with shields and plasma weapons, with elegant ships and advanced technology. How is that working? The room went silent. His compound eyes flickered with anger, but he did not respond. Captain Lee continued, We did not come here to fight your war your way. We came to fight it our way. Human beings have been killing each other for thousands of years. We have tried every weapon, every strategy, every dirty trick imaginable. We have learned that war is not about having the best technology. War is about breaking your enemy's will to fight. She nodded to Lieutenant, who opened his bag and placed a small data chip on the table. This contains our battle plans, Captain Lee said. We request permission to engage thee in a single contested system. Any system you consider lost. Give us 1 week. If we fail, you lose nothing you had not already lost. If we succeed, you will see what human warfare looks like. High Commander stared at the data chip. You want us to give you a system, with those ships, against the swarm. The system, Captain Lee said. Your records show it fell recently. They are still consolidating their forces there. It is perfect for our purposes. Is lost, said. The swarm has complete control. No fleet we have sent has survived. Then you have nothing to lose by letting us try. The council members looked at each other, could see the doubt in their eyes. They thought the humans were fools. They thought this was a waste of time, but they were also desperate enough to agree. Very well, said finally. Is yours. Take your primitive ships and your projectile weapons. Show us this human warfare. Captain Lee bowed slightly. Thank you, High Commander. In 1 week we will speak again, and I promise you the conversation will be very different. She turned and walked out, Lieutenant following close behind. Ambassador watched them go. She did not understand these humans. They were small and weak and their technology was ancient, but something in Captain Lee's eyes bothered her. It was confidence. Not the false confidence of fools, but the quiet certainty of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. For the first time in 30 years of war, felt something she could not name. Later, she would realize it was hope. The system had been beautiful once. 3 habitable planets, 40 million living in peace, cities of crystal and light, gardens that stretched for thousands of kilometers. All of it was gone now. The had come and consumed everything. The cities were ruins. The gardens were ash. The people were food. Now the system belonged to the swarm. 17 hive ships floated in orbit around Prime, the largest planet. Each hive ship was a living thing, a massive organic structure filled with millions of drones. They were waiting, digesting, preparing to move to the next system. They did not expect visitors. The human fleet arrived without warning. 47 ugly gray ships emerging from warp space at the edge of the system. On the bridge of the lead vessel, the UNSC Resolve, Commodore studied the enemy positions on his tactical display. 17 hive ships, he said calmly. Standard swarm formation. They have not detected us yet. Lieutenant Commander Shin, his second in command, stood beside him. She was young for her rank, but her eyes were old. She had fought in the Korean Reunification War before joining the space program. She knew what battle looked like. Our weapons are ready, she reported. The drones are deployed. Psychological warfare packages are loaded. We are waiting for your order. Commodore nodded. He was a patient man. Patience was important in war. The enemy who rushed made mistakes. The enemy who waited found opportunities. Begin Phase 1, he said. Across the system, thousands of small objects drifted toward the asteroid belt. They were human drones, simple machines no bigger than a person. Each drone carried a special cargo, explosives, sensors, transmitters. They attached themselves to asteroids and waited. Phase 1 took 12 hours. During that time, the humans did nothing visible. They did not notice them. The hive ships continued their slow orbit, unaware that the system around them was becoming a trap. On the Confederacy command station, Ambassador and High Commander watched through long-range sensors. They saw the human fleet sitting motionless at the edge of the system. They saw no weapons fire, no movement, nothing. "They are doing nothing," said with disgust. "They are afraid." Was not so sure. She had seen Captain Lee's eyes. Whatever the humans were doing, it was not nothing. In the system, Phase 2 began. They communicated through biological radio signals. Their hive ships broadcast orders on specific frequencies, coordinating the millions of drones that made up the swarm. It was an efficient system. It had never been attacked before. Lieutenant Commander Shin activated the jamming equipment. Human transmitters, hidden on dozens of asteroids, began broadcasting on frequencies, but they were not blocking signals. They were sending false ones. On the hive ships, confusion spread. Drones received orders to attack, then orders to retreat, then orders to attack different targets. Swarm commanders tried to restore control, but every correction was drowned in a flood of contradictory messages. Then the holograms appeared. Human psychological warfare was based on a simple principle: every creature fears something. Scientists on Earth had studied captured specimens and found their fear. The swarm feared fire. They feared the predators from their ancient, creatures of flame and heat that had hunted them before they achieved space travel. Giant holographic images appeared around the hive ships, massive fire creatures burning and roaring, seeming to attack the swarm. They knew they were not real. Their commanders knew they were not real, but the drones did not. Panic spread through the swarm like disease. Phase 3, Commodore ordered. The asteroids exploded. Thousands of asteroids throughout the system detonated simultaneously. The explosion sent massive rocks flying in every direction. The shields, designed to stop plasma weapons, could not stop solid matter moving at high speed. Hive ships were struck by debris. Holes opened in their organic hulls. Drones spilled into space. And then the human fleet moved. 47 ships accelerated toward the chaos. Their weapons, the strange tubes that Director had noticed, began to fire. They did not shoot plasma. They did not shoot lasers. They shot metal. Tungsten rods, each one 2 meters long and half a meter wide, accelerated to incredible speeds. The rods had no explosive charge. They did not need one. At their velocity, pure mass became pure destruction. The first rod struck a hive ship at the center of its mass. It punched through the organic armor like a needle through cloth. It exited the other side and kept going. The hive ship broke in half. More rods followed. More ships died. They tried to fight back. Their plasma weapons fired at the human fleet. But the humans were moving constantly, their ships dancing through space in patterns the swarm could not predict. The few shots that connected did damage, but the human ships kept fighting. They had no shields to lose. Their armor was thick. Their crews were protected deep inside. "They are not trying to survive," whispered, watching from the command station. "They are trying to win." In 6 hours it was over. All 17 hive ships were destroyed. The drones, millions of them, floated dead in space. The system was silent. Commodore stood on his bridge looking at the destruction. His fleet had lost 4 ships, 112 crew members dead. It was a price, but it was a price humans understood. "Send a message to the Confederacy," he said. "Is liberated, awaiting further orders." On the command station, Ambassador stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Around her, the leaders of 12 species were silent. They had watched the battle. They had seen the human tactics, the tricks, the traps, the brutal efficiency of kinetic weapons. High Commander spoke first. "What manner of species thinks like this?" Did not have an answer, but she knew one thing for certain. The humans were not primitive. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors. Word of the human victory spread across the galaxy like fire in dry grass. Every species in the Confederacy heard the story. The primitives from Earth, the ugly ships with no shields, the strange weapons that threw metal, the battle that lasted only 6 hours. For 30 years, the swarm had been unstoppable. Every fleet sent against them had failed. Every strategy had been defeated. And then the humans came with their ancient technology and their brutal tactics, and they did what no one else could do. They won. Ambassador stood before the full Confederacy Council, making the proposal she never thought she would make. I recommend we invite the humans to join the Confederacy as full members, not as observers, not as allies, full members with all rights and responsibilities. The debate lasted 3 days. Some species objected. They called humans dangerous, unpredictable, too violent to trust. But in the end, desperation won over pride. The vote was 11-1 in favor. Captain Lee accepted the invitation on behalf of Earth, but she made clear that humanity wanted more than a seat at the table. "We did not come here just to win one battle," she told the council. "We came to win the war, and to do that, we need to change how you fight." Colonel Han arrived 1 month later. She was different from the other humans had met. Captain Lee was calm and diplomatic. Commodore was patient and careful. Colonel Han was something else. She walked like a predator. She spoke like a teacher. And she looked at the Confederacy's military forces like they were children who needed education. "Your soldiers are well trained," she told High Commander. "They are brave, they are disciplined, and they are useless." His compound eyes flashed with anger. "Useless. Our warriors have fought for 30 years. "And lost for 30 years, Colonel Han replied. "Because you fight with honor, you announce your attacks, you follow rules of engagement, you treat war like a game with referees." She shook her head. "They do not play games, they eat, and you cannot defeat an enemy that wants to eat you by following rules." She established training camps on a dozen worlds. Human instructors arrived, soldiers who had fought in Earth's many wars. They taught things the Confederacy had never considered: guerrilla tactics, sabotage, assassination, psychological warfare, how to fight when outnumbered, how to win when, how to make every death cost the enemy 10 times its worth. The alien soldiers struggled at first. The concepts were foreign to them. War, in their understanding, was about facing your enemy directly. It was about honor and sacrifice. The human approach seemed cowardly, dishonorable. "Honor is for the living," Colonel Han told a group of officers. "The dead have no honor, they have nothing. Your job is to kill the enemy and stay alive. Everything else is decoration." Slowly, the alien soldiers began to understand. They learned to set traps. They learned to strike and disappear. They learned that a dead enemy was a dead enemy, whether killed in fair combat or shot in the back. Victory was the only thing that mattered. While Colonel Han trained soldiers, Chief Engineer worked on the ships. He was a quiet man with thick glasses and oil-stained hands. He had spent 20 years building military vessels on Earth. Now he walked through Confederacy shipyards, shaking his head at what he saw. "Beautiful ships," he told Ambassador, who accompanied him on an inspection tour. "Elegant design, advanced technology." He tapped a wall panel. "And completely wrong for war." "What do you mean?" "Your ships are designed to survive. Shields, redundant systems, emergency protocols. Everything is meant to keep the crew alive as long as possible." He shrugged. "Human ships are designed to kill. We put armor where it protects the weapons. We add manual overrides so systems keep working when computers fail. And we install self-destruct mechanisms in every vessel." Was horrified. "Self-destruct. You build your ships to explode." "Only if we are going to lose anyway," explained. "If my ship is about to be captured, I can make sure the enemy loses too. Take as many of them with me as possible." He smiled slightly. "It also makes our crews fight harder. When surrender is not an option, you find new ways to win." The Confederacy engineers resisted at first. They called the human modifications barbaric, wasteful. But Commodore authorized tests, and the results spoke for themselves. Human-modified ships survived damage that would have destroyed standard vessels. They kept fighting after losing shields. Their crews found ways to win when all logic said they should die. Within 6 months, the tide of war began to turn. They lost the system, then the cluster, then a dozen more. Human tactics by Confederacy forces caused chaos in swarm formations. Human weapons, mass-produced in orbital factories, tore through organic armor. Human stubbornness taught to alien soldiers turned every battle into a costly victory for the enemy. On her command station, Admiral Park received daily reports. She was an old woman now, older than when the war began. But her eyes were still sharp. Her mind was still quick, and she was already planning the final campaign. They are retreating to their core systems, General reported. Intelligence suggests they are consolidating their forces around there. Good, Park said. Let them gather. Let them think they are safe. She pulled up a holographic map showing the path to Prime. How long until we are ready for the final assault? 6 months, maybe less. Admiral Park nodded. They had started this war. They had killed billions. They had destroyed civilizations. They had thought the galaxy was their feeding ground. They were wrong. Prepare the fleet, she ordered. All of it. Confederacy and human forces together. We are going to finish this. In the dark between stars, the swarm waited, not knowing that the hunters were coming. And humanity never stopped hunting until the prey was dead. It was called the Nest. It was an ancient planet, dark and warm, covered in organic structures that pulsed with life. For 1,000,000 years, the swarm had spread from this world, consuming everything they found. Now they had returned to it, gathering their remaining forces for a final stand. Billions of drones filled the space around the nest. Thousands of hive ships formed a living wall. At the center of it all, deep beneath the planet's surface, the queen waited. She was old beyond measure, the mother of all, the mind that guided the swarm. She had never known defeat. She did not believe defeat was possible. She was wrong. The Allied fleet arrived at the edge of the system. 1,200 ships from 13 species, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Human vessels flew alongside cruisers. Battleships formed lines with destroyers. For the first time, the galaxy was united. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the UNSC Indomitable, flagship of the human fleet. She was 83 years old. Her hair was white. Her face was lined with age, but her voice was steady as she addressed the fleet. 2 years ago, we came to this galaxy as primitives. The Confederacy asked for support. They expected medical supplies and food shipments. They got something else. She paused. Today, we finish what we started. They have killed billions. They have destroyed civilizations. They thought they were the hunters and we were the prey. They were wrong. Beside her stood Ambassador, Captain Lee, and representatives from every Confederacy species. They watched the tactical display showing the enemy positions. They had everything they had left. It should have been enough to stop any attack. But the humans had been planning for 2 years. Phase 1, Admiral Park ordered, begin. Deep in the fleet, something unexpected happened. Drones began to behave strangely. They attacked their own hive ships. They ignored commands. They turned on each other in confusion. Dr. Sweppen had arrived. For 2 years, human scientists had studied biology. They had learned how the swarm communicated. The queen controlled her drones through chemical signals called pheromones. These chemicals carried orders, coordinating billions of individuals into a single unified force. Doctor had created a virus that destroyed the queen's control. It spread through the swarm's organic communication network, corrupting pheromone signals, turning coordination into chaos. Drones that had fought together for centuries now saw each other as enemies. Phase 2, Admiral Park said. Explosions rippled across the nest. Orbital stations broke apart. Defense platforms went dark. Weapons systems failed. For 6 months, human special forces teams had been infiltrating the system. Small ships, hidden among asteroids, had delivered soldiers to key positions. They had planted bombs. They had sabotaged power systems. They had mapped every defense installation. Now, at the moment of attack, they struck. Lieutenant, the young officer who had accompanied Captain Lee to the first council meeting, led one of these teams. He had spent 3 months living in the caves of a mining asteroid, waiting for this moment. When the signal came, he activated the charges that destroyed the swarm's primary sensor array. Phase 3, Admiral Park commanded. All ships attack. The Allied fleet surged forward. Human kinetic cannons fired first, their tungsten rods tearing through the confused formations. Confederacy plasma weapons followed, exploiting the gaps created by human firepower. Ships that had never fought together moved as one, their captains trained by human officers, their tactics refined through months of preparation. The battle was enormous, thousands of vessels on each side. weapons fire filling space with light and death, hive ships exploding, allied cruisers burning, the chaos of war on a scale never seen before. But the outcome was never in doubt. They were strong, they were numerous, they were fighting for their home, but they were fighting an enemy they did not understand, an enemy that did not follow rules, an enemy that had spent its entire history preparing for exactly this kind of war. The humans pressed forward, accepting losses that would have broken other species. When ships were damaged, they kept fighting. When weapons failed, they rammed enemy vessels. When death was certain, they activated self-destruct and took with them. "We do not surrender," Admiral Park had told her captains before the battle. "We do not retreat. We win or we die. There is no other option." The Allied fleet broke through the defensive line. Commodore led the assault on the Queen's fortress, his ship taking hit after hit but refusing to stop. Colonel Han coordinated ground forces that landed on the nest itself, fighting through tunnels filled with drones to reach the Queen's chamber. And in the end, it was a simple thing. A human soldier, Sergeant No, carried a nuclear device through the final tunnel. She was wounded. Her squad was dead. She knew she would not survive, but she walked forward anyway, through fire and blood and screaming enemies, until she reached the heart of the nest. The Queen saw her coming, a tiny human, barely larger than a drone, carrying death in her hands. The Queen had consumed civilizations. She had destroyed fleets, and now she was going to be killed by something so small. Sergeant No activated the device. The explosion was visible from orbit. In space, the swarm shuddered. Without the Queen's pheromones, the drones lost all purpose. They stopped fighting. They drifted aimlessly. They died. Admiral Park watched the tactical display as enemy signatures blinked out one by one. Around her, cheering erupted. Alien officers embraced. Human sailors wept. Ambassador approached her slowly. Thus eyes were wet with tears she could not explain. "We asked for support," she said quietly. "We expected so little." Admiral Park looked at the burning remains of the species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was gone. The war was over. "Humanity does not do things halfway," she replied. "You asked for help, we delivered." She turned and smiled, the same smile Captain Lee had shown in that first council meeting. Surprise! 100 years later, humanity was at the heart of the Galactic Confederacy, not because they were the oldest species, not because they were the most advanced, but because they understood something the others did not. The universe was dangerous. Survival was not guaranteed, and when survival was threatened, there was no room for honor or rules or fairness. There was only victory. The galaxy had asked for support. Humanity delivered surprise and awe. And the stars would never forget.